Welcome to Step 10 of the Clarity tutorial. Your Today tab displays all leads that need to be called at some point during the current day. In this segment, we'll show you how to develop rules for how this happens. Let's get started. Go to clarity-crm.com. Enter your login information and let's go to the home page. Under the Home tab, there's a Manage menu item at the top. Expand the Manage tab by selecting it and then click on Optimized Workflow. Here is the Manage Workflow screen. This is where rules are set for how you and your team call on leads that you have not contacted yet. As a side note, once they are contacted, they fall out of this set of rules. So after you make first contact, that's when requiring a calendar event comes in handy. Let's get back to the workflow topic. The Today tab includes clients that you have scheduled follow-up calls for, as well as leads you are still trying to make first contact with. Let me tie the Today tab together with optimizing your workflow. If you have an existing client that you are talking to, it's easy to schedule a call for them. But if you have clients that you or your team has not contacted yet, sometimes they get lost in the shuffle or don't get worked enough, and that's a lost opportunity. Clarity gives you the ability to establish rules that say, call new prospects every 3 hours on day 1, every 4 hours on day 2. Perhaps you give them a break for a few days and say, try the call again on day 5 and again on day 10. In other words, if there's a new lead or leads that your team has not contacted yet, you can establish a preference for how often these leads get called. The rules for this schedule are set up in this section, and when the time requirement has been triggered, the lead will go to the Today tab. Let's take a look at how this works inside Clarity. Click Add Practice. This is the input window where we'll set the rules for how your workflow operates. At the top, you need to decide on a name for this rule. In most cases, you'll only do one set of rules for all your lead sources. The only variance is if you want to practice one set of rules for one lead source over another. You can do so by applying this rule to a type of lead source. Otherwise, this rule applies to all uncontacted leads. I'll name this one Master Workflow. Below the practice name is an area that allows you to set up a beginning and ending time for this rule. Let's say that you want to control uncontacted leads that come in between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. every day. Make that setting here. It will reset and display the new workflow findings at midnight, but in this case, it won't look until 8 a.m. Below that is where we define how many times in a day a single lead might be called. In your initial screen, you will only have one day open. Let's add 3 more days for this example by clicking Add Day button. For your workflow, you can add as many days as you want. In the timeline, you define a time separated by the day the lead was initially added to the system. Call them day number 1, 2, 5, and 10, like our previous example. Now let's say on day 1, there will be 3 hours between contact attempts. On day 2, there will be 4 hours between contact attempts. On day 5 and 10, there will be a minimum of 8 hours between attempts. Let me try and break this down a little more. Day 1 is the first day the lead was introduced into the Clarity CRM. If the lead came in at 8:01 a.m. on day 1, it could get called 3 or 4 times that day, or every 3 hours based on how we set up these rules. If the lead came in at 5 p.m., it would only get called once that day. Why is that, you say? Our rules we set in place end our day at 6 p.m. So after the initial lead came in at 5 p.m., the 3-hour window could not come up again until the next day. In other words, the lead gets called on day 1 every 3 hours from when it first comes in. On day 2, the lead will get called every 4 hours, which means it will come up on our Today tab twice on day 2, unless we make contact with that lead. Remember my side note at the beginning? The lead leaves this rule set once contact is made. Okay, let's save this rule set and click Close. Here is our workflow practice we just created. You can delete this one or edit this practice here. Also, there is a section in the middle that we touched on earlier. If you have multiple lead sources, you can apply a practice specifically for that lead source by adding it here. For example, you may want self-generated leads to be less aggressively pursued, so you add one practice for self-generated leads. You may also have leads that you are paying for that are pre-screened and ready for your service or product. On those leads, you may want a more aggressive calling schedule, so you would want to set up rules to promote that retail lead source. Optimize Workflow is there to help you be productive and also to help you and your team stay on task. This is a system that will make you and your business prosper. Well, that's it for now. As always, please feel free to contact support with additional questions, and thank you for building your business with clarity.